I'm going to repeat my earlier opening with respect to opening statements. Each of you needs to be conscious that the more time we take with opening statement, and shouldn't limit it, but just know that it's a balancing act for us. So just before we start, and for the Hansard, starting on the right, could you please state your name and the organisation that you're with?
Anthony White is my name. I'm more as Tony. I'm the President of the Sport Aircraft Association of Australia and one of the founding members of the AGAA, which is the Australian General Aviation Alliance.
Okay. Mr. Morgan?
Benjamin Morgan from the Aircraft Owners and Pilots Association of Australia, and we're also a member of the Australian General Aviation Alliance.
Okay. Mr. Talbot?
Richard Talbot. I'm here representing the Aircraft Maintenance, Repair and Overhaul Business Association. We have approximately 350 aircraft repair and overhaul businesses across Australia, and I'm also the Vice President of AOPA Australia.
All right. What percentage of the market's that when you say there's 350 businesses?
About 50%.
Okay. Mr. Sesko?
I'm Peter Sesko. I'm the President of the Gliding Federation of Australia. Just so everybody understands, I'm also a member of the SAAA, who are at the other end, and I'm a member of RAAus.
You're another one of those ones that go up in the sky and then get released with no motor or anything, is that?
I have so much
what
fun,
you
Senator.
do?
It's great.
I bet it's fun.
I think you should take it.
I can close my eyes and get a kick out of that. Send us to.
Thanks, Chair. I think former Senator Ludwig was a glider, or is a glider. Okay, no, there you go. I suppose this goes on from chairs as we were. Mr. Morgan, you appeared in front of us in Sydney. We had a conversation. And I suppose it's all come about the frustration that your members have experienced with the two tiers. And I believe, and please, you're not doing an opening statement, but we really need to hear what's going on out there. What have been the frustrations? And I know there's been letters going backward and forward to CASA. So what we have established is your members, for whatever reason, are exposed to a tougher regime and a more costly regime.
That's correct.
So if you can explain to us what's actually going on out there.
Okay, well certainly, thank you very much for the opportunity to come and speak today. We really do appreciate it. I would like to start off by saying that we are suffering an environment of dual standard at this point in time, and it is placing the CASA regulated private pilot community at a significant disadvantage to those that have access to aviation through self-administrating organisations. I would like to be on the record and clearly state that the Aircraft Owners and Pilots Association and the Australian General Aviation Alliance are entirely supportive of the industry's right of access to associations, and we in no manner wish to infringe or impinge upon the rights of the members of RAAus and other organisations. We are supportive of their purpose in the industry. But what we are focused on and what we're looking at here is the need for universal, fair and equitable medical rights for all pilots regardless of the licence that they hold. And so under the current system, as you've heard from the presentation from the RAAus today, their members have access to the ability to self-certify their medical fitness. They can fill out a form, they can declare to the RAAus that they are fit and healthy, and they can go climb in an aircraft which is exactly the same in its construction and performance to a CASA regulated VH registered aeroplane. That is, these pilots are given a far lower liberalised approach to medical certification, one in which they just tick the box and sign the form, and yet our pilots within the CASA regulated arena are being subjected to medical certification requirements that are incredibly high and are forcing pilots out of our industry. And what do I mean by they're incredibly high? We have a situation where a pilot, in order to pass a Class 2 medical, can be required to undertake a plethora of additional blood work tests, sleep apnea tests, sleep deprivation tests. You name the tests, they seem to be exposed to it. And these tests cost our members and cost our community enormously. I have examples of members spending upwards of $5,000 and $6,000 to gain a private pilot medical certification. And this is a ludicrous situation. Those same pilots where CASA declare in a form letter that they receive that says that you have become or you are a risk to aviation safety and therefore we're declining your medical certificate, Quite often, more than not, these pilots immediately go across to the RAAus where they fill out a self-certification form and then they go flying in the RAAus. And many of them have continued to fly.
Same planes?
In many cases, same planes. And these people have gone on for many years to fly successfully and in fact are not a risk to aviation safety. And so there is a dual standard. The dual standard is very real, it's very tangible, and it is having an enormous negative impact on our industry. It's not just hurting private aircraft ownership and private aircraft flying, it's having an impact on the aircraft maintenance community, it's having an impact on the aviation flight training industry, and it's hurting the overall sustainability of the general aviation economy.
But Mr Morgan, you must know what's on CASA's mind with this. I mean, this is a very stark parity issue. You must know what's on their mind as to what their argument is with respect to your members versus the others. It would help us if you could guide us with what, or you can declare you don't know what's on their mind.
Well, Senator, the only reason that's been put on the table in front of us is that there is an argument that because CASA-regulated pilots being RPL and PPL holders will access controlled airspace, this seems to be the hanging point. And because CASA won't allow a pilot on a well, actually, it's technically not correct. They state that a pilot that's on a self-assessed medical can't access CTA. They can't allow our RPL and PPL...
ETA is what?
Sorry?
ETA?
Sorry?
CTA.
CTA, controlled airspace.
Controlled airspace.
Sorry.
Which is a built-up area.
Correct.
So can I just jump in there, Chair? So just help me out, please, Mr Morgan. So is it a case that if a plane fell out of the sky in the city, is more of a concern if it fell out of the sky out in rural Australia?
Well, Senator, it'd be a concern to fall out of the sky regardless, but if you had an environment where there was controlled airspace and the person was operating an aircraft on a self-assessed medical or self-certified medical, they'd be an RAAus pilot or a glider pilot, and technically they should be staying out of that space.
Clarify, so I seem to recall flying over the top of Bankstown and other places like that, out to the training grounds in Western Sydney, and that wasn't controlled airspace.
No, you have situations right across Australia where you have controlled airspace and non-controlled airspace.
No, I understand. I'm just trying to differentiate. There was some statements flying around that controlled airspace is above populated areas. I put it to you, there are many uncontrolled airspaces across Sydney.
Correct.
So that's not a differentiator.
No.
Thanks for that. It's even more confusing.
No, I just wanted to...
Well, Senators, if
to
I
let
could
you know.
confuse you just a little bit further, I might ask that my colleague Peter Sesko here makes a comment about the fact that our gliding fraternity for almost 70 years have had access to CTA on self-certified medicals.
Yeah, we get that now. No more time needs to be spent on that, right? But you better guide us on why metropolitan Sydney is broken into a patchwork quilt as to why some is controlled airspace and some of it is not. Is it to do with aircraft's manoeuvres? Are they approaching an airport, therefore they're in control space? Are they over Parliament House? That's because they're in control space.
It's all to do with air traffic management, Senator, in terms of the design of that air traffic area.
Yes, so meaning that while they're in controlled airspace, something's happening. They're not just flying along at 30,000 feet and transitioning across. Something's happening. They're thinking about a manoeuvre. They're in a pattern. They're going to land. Is that a fair assessment of it, so that we can get a handle around that?
Can I answer? Senators, controlled airspace fundamentally is there for the protection of the big passenger aircraft and the smaller passenger aircraft, and the fare-paying public who have no understanding. They just get on a bus and they go fly with Qantas, Virgin, whomever, or they get into a second-tier airline, and all that airspace is there to control and make as safe as possible those aircraft. And
No, we appreciate that. It's like a beltway where you've got they're all coming together.
Correct. And the only different...
We'll need to guide you, Mr. White, here. So if I'm flying along and then suddenly a little beeper goes off and it says to me, you're in controlled airspace, I can sort of move over 100 metres and I'm out of controlled airspace. I'm still over the same suburban environment. Is that right?
Correct.
That's correct.
So what percentage of Greater Sydney or Melbourne, Perth, you pick one that you have experience with, would be controlled airspace versus non-controlled airspace?
Well, we could work that out, Senator, but we'd have to take that on notice
Just to
give you
guide
a percentage
you,
number.
Chair, very close to Sydney Airport, controlled airspace is right on the ground.
Sure.
As you move slightly further away,
Sure.
the controlled airspace goes higher and higher and higher.
It's like
I know the answer to my own question because I investigated accidents.
Okay, that's right, you do.
So I know the answer to my own question. I'm trying to get it out so that
Yeah,
it'll
that's an
guide
answer.
my colleagues in relation to the questions that they're asking, that's all.
It's like an upside-down wedding cake. Effectively, the wedding cake starts at the higher level and it comes down to the
Sure.
airport.
Sure.
And anything that's underneath that wedding cake steps is outside controlled airspace, and anybody can fly in that.
All right, just
space.
finally then, the regulations are that if you've self-assessed, you shouldn't be in controlled airspace, full stop, that's a principle.
Correct.
But you're suggesting that there are people who've self-assessed that are lawfully in that space or unlawfully in the space?
If I can talk to that and the risk associated with that, Senator, I think it's a...
Well, just talk to the lawfulness of it.
Okay, the lawfulness of it is glider pilots have been able to do that since we started in 1949, and we take that seriously. The vast majority of gliding organisations are outside controlled airspace because it makes life
No,
difficult.
but you're telling us now that glider pilots who've self-assessed can go into controlled airspace. They're the only class of pilots that can do that?
I guess that's the
Self-assessed
case.
pilots.
Yes.
And why them and not so many others?
It's largely historical, but it's also based around risk management, I believe. Historically, glider pilots have been able to do it. There are 3 risk areas that I probably need to mention, which would help, I believe. I'm not trying to take time.
Sure.
In the British Gliding Association in 1969 did a 10-year study of 1.6 million flights, and they found there were 4 medical incidents in that. In 2016, the British CAA did a similar study, and I don't know their methodology, but this is out there. They did a similar study, and they found sufficient lack of risk to go to self-declaration for a private pilot's licence, pilot licence holders to carry 3 passengers with a maximum takeoff mass of 5,200 kilos from that point. So that's recent. The Gliding Federation has flown roughly 9 million flights since 1949, and we've had, we think, maybe, and we're not sure, it's a bit undefined, 3 medical incidents that have caused crashes and no external fatalities associated with those. I think perhaps the most important one that I can help you with is I was at a CASA medical inquiry in 1988 or 89. I was chairman of the operations panel of the Gliding Federation, and one of the people at that, there was Qantas, Ansett, CASA, or the equivalent to CASA, Department of Transport or something in those days. There was us and I think the Australian Parachute Federation, and CASA was openly trying to get us to take on CASA medicals. We were fighting it, and one day we came in on the 3rd meeting, I think, and one of the attendees stamped on the table and said, "You guys have got to get CASA medicals, because my mate had a CASA medical last Monday and he died from a heart attack on Wednesday." Now, he was just so emotional he didn't know what he was saying, but that's the whole point.
Sure.
Medical system cannot predict heart attacks even now.
So can I come back, Chair?
Yes,
If I may
Senator,
just,
yeah,
and
Paul.
I'll move on so everyone else gets a chance. So clearly